to 7 Investing Now, a show that teaches you how to take a long-term view on investing by better understanding what's happening in the market now.
Good afternoon, or really, who knows what time it is. I am Dan Klein. This is 7 Investing Now. I am live in Las Vegas. You cannot tell, but in that direction behind me is the most amazing mountain view overlooking the Las Vegas Strip. It's not quite as cool as some of the Australian views I've seen in Nirban, but it is not bad. And so it's like 2:30 here. What time is it in Australia?
It's about 9:30 a.m. in the morning, November 8th.
We had daylight savings. I had a 6:15 a.m. flight, so I got an extra hour. But basically, I've had 2 hours of sleep, 7.5 hours of travel. So I am excited. We are going to talk Peloton. You may not have noticed in Nirban, but things are not good in Peloton land. So Peloton reported, and since they reported, their shares have fallen by about 35%. This is a company that makes exercise bikes. They're a software subscription service is actually how they make most of their revenue. The bike is basically break even. So two bad things happened here. One, sales were a little lower than expected. That's okay. They were still close. But basically they said, hey, sales next year are going to be bad. We have different views on this. Why don't you share your, I'm going to say you're not a big fan of this company. I'm not a giant fan either, but I see the case maybe more than you do.
So my case, my case for these sort of ideas is at a very high level, in tech or in consumer discretionary, if you have something really novel that around which you can build a moat, that is sustainable for a longer period of time, because then you can add on other things. The problem I see with many things like Peloton, for example, the idea is cool, but the idea is replicatable like this, right? So Apple is already doing this stuff. Apple Fitness Plus already has, they don't have group classes yet, but they are going to be rolling out group classes. They already have recorded lessons and, with their instructors that you can follow on a bike, which you don't have to buy. You can buy the cheapest bike possible and you can work with it, right? So then I was, logging into Zoom and I see Zoom is offering similar classes too. So it's very difficult, I think, in this particular niche to establish yourself as a player if you have nothing else to, I guess, bankroll it, right? So Apple has its entire business to bankroll Fitness Plus. Zoom has its entire business to bankroll whatever it wants to call it, Zoom Fitness and whatnot. Peloton has only this. So that's one thing. So I call it like when a company can become a feature of other work. When a company's products and services are like a feature of other companies' products and services, I think that's a problem. That often means margin pressure. And then this company doesn't even have high margins, right? I mean, the margins are pretty low, I think lower than 30%. And we're talking gross margins.
I mean, the margins on selling a bike are basically like 5%. Like it's
yes,
but that's not their business. Their business is the subscription. And let me push back a tiny bit.
Okay.
I view this another business I don't want to own, by the way. So it's not like I'm arguing.
Well, so you're not bullish.
No, but I view this a lot like Lululemon. You can buy yoga pants at Target that are like 95% as good as Lululemon yoga pants. But people don't do, I mean, lots of people do that, but a certain percentage of women at the yoga studio, and I used to regularly go to yoga studio, wouldn't be caught dead in anything but Lululemon yoga pants. And I actually think that's what the Peloton business model is. But I will say my faith in that has been shaken a little bit. So I'm here in Vegas with our former colleague, more my former colleague than yours, Matt Frankel, who has a Peloton. And I said to Matt, like, is it still awesome? Like, you used to rave about it all the time. And he said, actually, like, it becomes kind of repetitive. And at some point, like, you just want to go to the gym. And that was the first time I was like, wait, maybe this isn't like the enduring cult I kind of expected it to be, the way sort of Lululemon is.
Yeah, so to add to your question, to your point, right? So yes, you can build a cult around it. Lululemon has a cult. And I mean, if you think about Lululemon's competition, there are some other competition in that area. You can say Nike can compete in that, the price points that they've got. It is hard to make a brand. Once you've made a brand, you can sustain with that brand for a while. Now, when the problem is that there's no dearth of, so how much does it take Apple to actually take one of its stores and put a fitness studio into it? doesn't actually take much for them to do that and say, okay, we're going to also now not only teach you how to use your Mac, but also teach you how to do exercise. It is a possibility. And so I just think that it is a tough area. And the other thing to remember is Lululemon is competing with Target and Nike. These guys are going to compete with Apple and Zoom. That's a different type of competition I think about. The last thing I think is, well, again, I'll stop pushing back, is a lot of people are going to go back to the gym, especially the gym fanatics are going to go back to the gym because they want the social life of the gym, and you meet people and you feel a different vibe, you hear the loud music. So there's that. The other thing is that if you had hit a critical mass, so they've got what 1 million plus about subscribers, right? That's nothing in the subscription land.
It's like 2.4 million own the bike and have a subscription. It's like closer to 6 million when you look at just the subscription. But from a price point, from a margin revenue point, the person who owns a bike and has a subscription is a much better customer than just the person that gets the service.
Right. So I feel like they still have not, it's like crossing the chasm. Like you can build a business, you can validate an idea, and then other people can take it and run away with it. And they haven't yet crossed that chasm. And crossing the chasm, like in terms of becoming big enough, sustainable enough, building multiple products. So this reminds me a lot of like Fitbit or of GoPro, where the business model, or even to some extent like company like Sonos or Spotify, right? Those are the companies it reminds me of, where your single product.
I don't want to own any of those. I think that's important.
But that's the point, right? This means that they can be good businesses, but they're definitely not great businesses. And their business towards greatness, there's a lot of challenges along the way, right? And all of these companies will complain about the big tech is doing this. Well, big tech, well, you don't have a great idea. That's why big tech is able to copy it, right? You got to have something great first.
Well, so here's the problem, and I don't buy the gym argument. If someone is paying $120 a month to be like an Equinox member or like an expensive gym, that person can afford the Peloton. And look, I just bought a Nordic track, like a fitness trainer. Like it's an exercise machine, but it's iFit connected. And it's not nearly as good as what I've heard about Peloton, but I didn't want a bike. I don't like riding a bike. I wanted something where I was lifting weights, and I pay a personal trainer to come train me 3 times a week. But the days he doesn't, I wanted to have something. I think that's probably pretty typical of the Peloton user. The problem for me is the word you use there, business. I would argue that Peloton is a good business. It is not a good investment. That when you look at the valuation, I'm not precisely sure, like, can Peloton go from 2.4 to 10 in the next like 5 years? Probably, but can it go to 30 ever? Like, I don't think it can. So it's like, yeah, it can add a rower, can add a strength machine, but it can't add like a blender. Like there's just some point where like what it is just very limiting. So again, I actually think it's an important brand. I would love to actually see like when this is down to $10 billion in valuation, I actually would love to see Apple buy them. I think it's an Apple-like device. But am I getting that right? That this is just like, it's a really good idea. It's really good execution in a space where everybody else executes pretty badly, but it's not an investment.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. So like, we have a Nordic in our basement, we have a Nordic cycle or one of the spin bike, to use the correct terminology, and we have a cross trainer. I absolutely detest the iFit, and I detest the fact that they make you, every time I say I want to use this thing in manual mode, I have to say that I want to skip signing into iFit, right? That's just bad GUI design, and it's a way of them to try it. And I use this equipment with my Apple Fitness Plus, right? And for me, that's more than enough. For somebody else, it's probably not enough. So, see, here's the thing. I am not sure whether having equipment bankrolled into the subscription or bundled together is actually necessary. That's the thing I'm not, because you said Nordic, I said Nordic. Many people want Nordic. Many people may want a different bike. I think you should be able to dissociate the bike from the equipment, and then you should be able to do the exercise in any sort of platform. And then if they have a better experience, then, maybe at a $5 billion valuation, they're worthwhile for somebody to buy. At that point, they're not buying just the brand, they're buying the brand plus the users, right? So and Apple has done that a number of times. They've bought things like Bedit, which is like this bed, sleep tracker system. They have users. So Apple bought, of course, Beats, but got hardware with
Yeah,
that
I
too.
think this
So
is closest to Beats. Like in that
hmm,
Beats, which is not a great product, is a really great brand. Peloton, I'd argue, is a great product and it has a very loyal user base. I also think it is an Apple-like product. The biggest mistake I think they made, and again, push back if you want, is they cut the price of their core bike where Apple doesn't really cut prices. It sort of releases new things, and then the old thing gets cheaper. They did release an enhanced bike, but it's not the way like a new iPhone is clearly a different model. It's like, oh, this bike has like a bell in a basket. Like I'm teasing a little bit there, but it's not
yeah,
that different. So I actually think they did something that Apple would never do. Apple never undercuts its value on products that are
yeah,
working. They might do it for HomePod or something that isn't working,
yeah.
but
Or
they're
don't
not.
discontinue it.
Did they discontinue HomePod?
Well, they discontinued the larger HomePod, right? Because they figured that that price point does not work. So, well, as I thought the larger HomePod was great, right? But they're basically pushing ahead with the mini because the price point is great. Um, yeah. So, like, okay, maybe to your point, a good valuation. One of the things I think Peloton lacks is the ability to integrate with other devices your experience. So they've got a good bike and a good experience on that bike, but how about interacting with other fitness tracking devices like your Apple Watch and things like that? That might be something for Apple, where if it buys it, they can integrate all that experience together, then put it nicely, seamlessly to the health app and things like that. At the right valuation, right? This is what still a $20 billion company, isn't it?
I think it's still like a $30 billion company. Like
I'm gonna check.
yeah, it's that's the problem. And look, the one thing I want to push back on is we've seen this with Netflix. I actually don't think the slowdown in bike purchases actually shows that long-term demand. Like rich jerks who buy a Peloton, and I'm teasing a little bit because a lot of those people are my friends. That market isn't going to get smaller. It's a status symbol, but it's like Netflix subscriptions. If you add 10 million in Q1 of the pandemic, you might only add another million or two,
Hmm.
and maybe you'll get to a higher number at the end of the year. I actually think that's where Peloton is, and they're basically saying like, yeah, like we sold a lot of our 2022 bikes already. So
Yes, yes.
like I think the market's not fair about that, and we've seen this in
Uh,
retail too, where anyway, jump in.
so its market cap is 17 billion right now. Um, so I guess the question
So
is, how big is that?
down from about 30
Down
with the
from
cut.
30, yeah, with the cut. Uh, the big question in my mind is, how big is the TAM? And do they have the machinery to actually expand the TAM? That's where I think an acquisition comes in handy. Is somebody who has the subscription base but can create more attachment with the product. It becomes a useful thing. Whereas if you don't have the subscription base, I think we said Netflix and to some extent Spotify. Spotify's business model is different. Netflix was so ahead in the game, I guess, in terms of streaming, right? That it really had a long runway with no competition. I think that makes a difference. And then when Disney Plus came in and threw competition at them, we saw how quickly Disney Plus could also ramp up, right? So people just didn't, I guess, realize the power of the platform.
But
And
Disney Plus is unique. We're seeing even HBO Max and Peacock and all these other high, Paramount Plus, whatever you want to call it. Those are all like at best not that successful. Disney was
yeah,
a very unique player here, and
right,
and look, you're right. If Peloton had 2 years where none of these other, but I also think Peloton, from a sales and marketing point of view, they're kind of doing a bad job. So they bought Precor. Precor has an
right.
enormous gym presence. Why are there not at every West Palm Beach and well, Florida in general, which has a lot of high-end homeowners associations? Why does the gym in my building not have two Pelotons? Like it makes no sense. Like we have exercise bikes. We're leasing those exercise bikes. We could easily be leasing a Peloton. They clearly just don't have the sales apparatus for that. When they bought Precor, that gave them a lower bike point that they could have put Peloton screens on. They should have been at every hotel, at every high-end community. And it feels like that opportunity has kind of been squandered. And now, like, you might see the either newly public or about to be public iFit, which I agree is a terrible product as someone who owns a Nordic Track device. The fact that the manual tracking doesn't specifically track what exercise I'm doing, even though I'm doing exercises on their poster, That seems to me like you can take their classes, but their classes are all centered around everything has to use the machine. And like it's like, wait, I don't need to do a push-up using the weight machine. Like Peloton does that nicely. Like if they ask you to do like weightlifting, you don't have to like do it while riding a bike. So I think a better company owning Peloton, a better sales operation could actually do better with the product.
I think I agree with that. Yeah, somebody who has the sales machinery, somebody who can basically do an adjacent sale, somebody, like basically someone like Apple at the right valuation can make this a very nice tuck-in acquisition that works really comfortably for Apple. Yeah, and it would ensure. I mean, here's my problem with Peloton right now. It might appear attractive, but I am not sure 100. Again, I don't follow this business that closely. I'm not sure whether right now it's a value trap or great value. I don't know. And I'm kind of ambivalent. I have negative opinions about it, but that doesn't really mean that I am like I don't have well-formed views on it. I just have views, but I'm not necessarily well-formed.
I think the bull case will take 5 years if everything goes well to sort of build to that where they could say, hey, look, we're actually a subscription company because so you own a Nordic Trek bike. Those are like, I don't know what, $1,300, $1,400 American dollars. Like they're expensive.
Yeah, they're expensive. Yeah.
I bought a $2,000 Nordic Trek exercise thing. There is zero chance I'm not going to pay for that subscription because my thing, not so much the bike, because you can use the bike with other things. My thing is pretty tied to iFit. So yeah, that is the advantage Peloton has. Like if you buy a Peloton, you're admitting failure. You're basically on the couch eating ice cream. If you say, hey, I'm canceling my Peloton subscription. So their churn is very low. It ticked up a bit. And I'll push back on one thing you said. You equated it to Fitbit and GoPro. Those products stink. GoPro is an incredibly limited, like, sure, if I'm riding a water slide and want to point it, like, the use case is you buy a GoPro, like, why did I get this? Like, what is it for? Yeah. And look, I'm wearing a Fitbit. It's bad. It's not as good as the Apple Watch. Here is why I wear it. The Apple Watch doesn't give you the option of not seeing your heart rate at all times. And I was finding that sort of paralyzing. I'd look at like my heartbeats per minute. I'm like, why am I at 92? And it's like, it was just too much information for me. So I'm intentionally wearing a crummier watch. But Peloton is actually the best product in its class. So I think it does have that going for it.
Yeah, like, I mean, again, I don't have the experience of using it. So, and I'm probably not the right demographic for it in the first instance.
I think you are. You're pretty well off. Like, you have the ability.
I would not buy it just because, I have a very limited threshold for buying subscription products that's not from Apple. Basically, it has to be an Apple product. And if Apple has a competing product, there's no chance I'm buying something else. Apple has Fitness Plus. There's just basically no chance I'm going to go and get Peloton because I've got the Apple One Premier package. Basically has everything. So the only things I pay for extra is really Netflix and Amazon Prime. And I pay for Prime because I get a lot of stuff from Amazon. And it's just convenient. I like one bill. I don't want to pay 100 bills. So
I pay for Netflix because I don't want to get divorced. I almost never watch it. But my wife and son like true crime, so they watch it a lot. I pay for Discovery Plus because all of those like cooking shows are good like background when you're working. You just throw on like diners, drive-ins, and dives or whatever, and it's cheap. It's like there's a lot of value there. But I have the Apple subscription. We did a show, and I'll pivot here because I think we've beaten Peloton to the ground. We did a show about Apple, and I was very negative on Apple TV. Well, guess what I watched my whole flight here? I watched 3 episodes. Foundation. So I don't know if you've seen this. Have you seen this one yet?
I have seen the first 2.
So I reread the books in the beginning of the pandemic because I was just looking for stuff to read that like wouldn't stress me out. And I went, there is no possibility they could make this a good show. Oh my God, is this a good show? Like this makes me rethink, wait, maybe Apple has actually figured out how to make TV. So I am way more interested in checking out some of the Apple TV programming. I know that has nothing to do with Peloton, but like, I was a little wrong on Amazon because some of the Amazon Prime shows, The Boys is really good, but the success to hit failure ratio is Netflixian, like where it's like one thing is a hit. maybe Apple has kind of figured out how everything can be a niche, because I'm not a morning show person, but for like my mom, that's like the target audience.
Yeah, so it's like, morning show, there's actually what I think right now, my strategy ever since Apple TV Plus has come is to first see if there's a program on Apple TV Plus, because it's quite likely that all three of us can actually watch it together. So I've always thought Apple has a great strategy in terms of content. So I loved Little America. I loved Home Alone. Home Alone. Then there's the show about Jacob and him being caught. So and then Tehran, and then Foundation. Right. And these are the ones, and Coda. I quite like Coda actually. So I found more things to watch on Apple TV Plus. Then I think on many others, sometimes I struggle because there's just too much input and too many choices. That said, I would not cancel Netflix or Amazon. Oh, Amazon Prime I can't cancel because I have other reasons to have Amazon. And Netflix I wouldn't cancel because I watch Bollywood movies, and the big Bollywood movies either come on Amazon Prime or they're going to come on Netflix, and they will never come on Apple TV Plus, because Apple TV is not going to pay ridiculous amounts of money to acquire things. So, but again, yeah, I mean, back to Peloton, I think I guess let me put it this way: can they survive long enough without continuing to bleed money? That's number one. Number two is, can their valuation from here go up, right? What other tricks do they have in their pocket, right? So, I mean, the gym trick that you pointed out is a great one, right? If they can execute on that, that is, great branding, great visibility. Potentially, they could give a subscription done with these gyms, right? I mean, that's a possibility.
Yeah. So here's the thing: they need a rower, they need a strength trainer. I would argue that they should buy or merge with Tonal, which is like sort of the default amazing strength trainer. That's what I would have bought, except you need a wall to mount it on, and I live in a rental property, and I didn't have an easy wall to do that. I wasn't going to construct something. So here's the argument I'll make for Peloton. I think the valuation is probably going to keep coming down. That being said, the loss is a little deceptive. The loss is largely a capital expenditures loss. They built a factory in the US. A lot of those expenses hit this quarter. So this is a company that expects to be profitable next year, even at slowing sales. I do think that will help not necessarily raise the valuation, but buttress the valuation. If this gets fully cut in half and it drops to like 14, 15 billion, I think that's probably where it's going to end up. And it becomes a very attractive target for a company looking for subscription revenue that thinks it can grow that base. I also think there might be consolidation in this space. Like, look, should Nordic Track have gone public? Absolutely not. Like this is an example of money being too easy. It's not a well-run company. I mean, it may be well-run, but the iFit app is not well executed.
No.
So the user interface is bad. I paid for my device to be set up, and setup didn't actually include setting it up. It actually just included like putting it together. Whereas like Peloton actually comes over and shows you how to use it. Like there's just a lot of customer service. Like I spent an hour trying to figure out how to set up iFit, and then I called and waited 45 minutes, and they said, "Oh no, there's a specific app for your device." I'm like, well, couldn't there be like a sticker or something on like the package I get? Being like how would I possibly know that? And those are just the kind of things that we're seeing this with SPACs a lot. That companies that shouldn't go public, content companies largely, but certainly some device companies. So I do think there's going to be some consolidation. And look, this is a good product. Like when Lululemon bought Mirror, I argued that Mirror was basically a big iPad. Like it's a really stupid product in my opinion. You could just do it on your TV. There's no reason you need that device. I actually think there's a long history in the US of like people being really into like the connected bike riding, whether that's in a SoulCycle studio or at home. There's a community to it. I think they'll do well with apparel, but I do think it's a valuation question. I think it's a growth story question. So I will give you the last word. Any last thoughts on Peloton as we close?
Well, I'm just going to agree with everything that you said towards the end, because that's exactly where I am at. It's a growth story question, 100%. It's a valuation question, 100%. And I don't know the product, but I agree. I know what iFit. I love the hardware. The software is incredibly bad. And I really I'm actually Googling and trying to figure out, is there a way for me to permanently disable that software to just go to manual mode? Apparently there is not. So and that, I think making good hardware and software is really hard. So if they've cracked that, that is a skill. And that can work really well. So actually agree with you.
So what's the lesson here, Seven Investors? There's an important one. Every good product is not a good investment. Every good business, like you might love your really well-run like local diner. That doesn't mean it's franchisable, because like the guy behind the counter isn't necessarily duplicatable. So this, again, at a certain scale, is a good business. Like we see this on Shark Tank a lot. The sharks will say, hey, this could make you a nice living, but it's not investable. I think in a lot of ways, Peloton isn't investable. I'm not a fan of buying shares of a beleaguered company because you think it's going to get acquired, because that doesn't always work out. I'm the guy who said Amazon was going to buy Radio Shack. I was really, really wrong about that. So you're watching Seven Investing now. If you would like to become a Seven Investing member, we make this really easy to do. You'd think we'd make it hard. Our service is so valuable. You'd think you'd have to like wrestle Hulk Hogan and fight a bear, but no. You go to seveninvesting.com. Actually, wrestling Hulk Hogan probably wouldn't be that hard now. He's pretty old. But like if you go to seveninvesting.com/subscribe, you can pay us either $49 a month. That's, you could do that. Or here's the good one, $3.99 a year. You get a bunch of months free. I'm not good at math, so I can't quite figure that out. But it's like 3 months, maybe 4 months free. That is a great deal. If you are a student, if you are actively enrolled in school or buying a subscription for a student, you can pay $84 a year. If you're not the student, email us at info@seveninvesting.com. We will help you through that process. It's the holiday season. It is a great time to gift a Seven Investing subscription. Same thing. Email us at info@seveninvesting.com. If you would like to get in touch with us on Twitter, we of course all have individual Twitter handles. I would argue that Anirban and I are very enjoyable to follow on Twitter, but that is entirely up to you. And you can follow the company at Seven Investing. That is the number 7. It's not like 7 ones. It's not Roman numerals. It is the number 7 investing. I'm a little bit goofy. I'm in Vegas. It's been a very long day. But Anirban, thank you for doing this.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, JT Street. Thank you, Sam Bailey. Thank you, all of you. I'm going to go hit the strip. We will see you on Wednesday.